this section, I'm going to talk to you about alcohol policies and the role of alcohol and safety abroad. If you're going to be studying in North Africa, the Middle East, or in certain Muslim countries, we will talk to you separately about the specific alcohol policy for your particular country or program. And you may be asked to abstain from alcohol entirely or to drink only in certain contexts and settings. And again, we will have a separate conversation with you about that if that's the case. For students going to all other countries, however, the things I'm going to cover now are general to most countries of the world. First of all, it is typical that the drinking age or the age of legal consumption is lower in virtually every country than it is in the United States. So it is not a violation of HWS or program policy that you consume alcohol per se, but your program may have specific rules or context in which alcohol is or isn't allowed. For instance, you might not be permitted to consume alcohol in your bedroom in a homestay, or you may not be able to drink at all on excursions or field trips. But in general, you will be of age and you will be permitted to consume alcohol if you choose, and to take part in pub life, have a drink when you go to a restaurant, and so on. So what we really want to talk about isn't our policy so much as safety and alcohol and reasonable consumption. Generally, there are a few things to keep in mind. First of all, be safe, be thoughtful, be responsible, know your limits, stop before you hit your limits, and make sure that simply because you are drinking, you are not then irresponsible and violating other behavioral standards. You know, for instance, it is never okay that you engage in vandalism or that you're yelling and screaming and disturbing the peace as a byproduct of having consumed alcohol. So be sure that your use of alcohol never interferes with other behavioral standards for your program. Be aware always that you understand the different contexts in which you might drink abroad. In the States, certainly on a campus like HWS, most students drink at frat parties, at dance parties, downtown, with a crowd of other people who are primarily students and almost always young people like yourselves. This may not be true abroad. You are far more likely, if you go out, to be drinking where there are a much broader range of ages of the people who are in the same location where you are. So there may be older people, there may be parents who brought their young children to the pub or to the restaurant. And you will find, therefore, that appropriate behavior, including appropriate drinking behavior in that setting, is different than it would be if you're just drinking at a fraternity party on campus. Also be aware that in many countries, alcohol content per volume is higher than it is in the United States. So the amount of alcohol that you get in a typical beer in, say, the UK or in Germany may have twice the alcohol volume of a similar amount of alcohol in the States. This means that if you drink by the numbers, as in I would go out for an hour and I normally would have 3, 1 is going to hit you like 2, and 2 like 4, and 4 like 6. So you need to be careful when you're drinking, if you're drinking abroad, to listen to your body and to be making sure that you understand how the alcohol is impacting you. Drink slowly. Give your body 10 minutes to metabolize something and see how you feel before you order a second drink. Make sure that if it does jump up on you and you've had more than you intended and you are feeling like you really are impaired, that you take corrective steps. So sober up before you leave the pub or the restaurant or the club. Don't ever find yourself in a situation where you're going to go out and just be out on the street, weaving around, visibly impaired. That is unfortunately likely to make you a target or a victim of some kind of crime. And we want you to be safe first and foremost. We also want to make sure that if you have too much to drink, that you are careful about how you're going to get home. You will not be going out abroad in Geneva, New York. You're going to be in a place that's unfamiliar to you. It might be a larger city. It may be a place where you can't get around back to your home by walking because of distance, or it may not be safe to walk at night. And so you need to be taking a bus or a train. You want to make sure you know how to get where you're going and you have a safe way to do that in that country. If you are alcohol impaired, you may not be using good judgment. So always make sure that if you have too much, that you sober up before you leave, that you call a taxi rather than trying to use public transportation or walk alone, for instance, at night. And in general, that you are using the buddy system. Certainly you need to use the buddy system if you're out drinking, but frankly, you should be using the buddy system anyway. If you go out in a new place, you should have a buddy with you. And that's whether you are walking or whether you are going to a museum, and certainly, again, if you're out after dark. So those are just basic guidelines whenever you're drinking. Be aware that for most bad things that happen to students when they're abroad, bad things of any kind, you wind up in the hospital, you wind up with legal problems, you wind up as a victim, you're injured. Usually alcohol is involved. So use your common sense, be responsible, be thoughtful. And finally, be aware that there are sometimes also some gender differences about alcohol abroad. There may be a double standard, frankly, in your country. It may be that men are perceived to be cool or doing the right thing when they drink, but women who drink are considered to be of less good character. We're not excusing that difference. We just want you to be aware that others may perceive you differently than you wish to be perceived if you're in a country that has different norms about sex and alcohol.